Hello, I'm Kim Droege, and I'm your host of Connecting with Kim. Thank you for joining us today for this first edition on Tampa Bay Arts and Education Network. So I thought I'd take a few moments before we start the show to talk about the format. The format is a conversation between two people who are interested, engaged, and passionate about the subject we're discussing. It's an information flow from us to you. There is no gotcha questions. It's a family-friendly show. And the purpose of my show is to give you up-to-date information about people, places, and things that I think you might want to know about in order to live your best life in our little corner of paradise. So that's the show, and that's how we run it. When I started the show in the fall of 2019, my first guest for my first show was Mr. Craig Latimer, the Supervisor of Elections for Hillsborough County, Florida. And I'm delighted that my first guest for the show today on TBAE is Mr. Craig Latimer again. Welcome, Craig.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
I'm so delighted that you could join me today. We've come full circle, and it's really wonderful. So when we started the show, and you were my first guest in the fall of 2019, we were preparing for the elections of 2020. And a lot has happened, and here we are again preparing for the elections of 2022. And a lot has taken place. So why don't we start in talking about everything that you and your wonderful team have done since the elections of 2020 to prepare for this election, the plans that you've set, the goals that you made, and the actions that you took. Let's start it there.
Yeah, so let's back up to 2020 first and talk about not only did we have a great election here in Hillsborough County, but the entire state of Florida ran a great election. The governor commended it, the Secretary of State commended it, and we did run a good election. Since that time, there's been some legislative changes that have taken place, and a lot of it's around vote by mail, and you hear a lot about the vote by mail ballot drop boxes. I can tell you first off that the vote by mail drop boxes, that doesn't affect us at all because we've been doing exactly what the legislation now says we should do. That's how we were doing it before. There will be some changes in vote by mail. It used to be that you could get a vote by mail request was good for 2 general election cycles. Now it's only 1. In addition, when you request that vote by mail ballot, you're going to have to also include your driver's license number, your Florida ID card, or the last 4 of your social in order for us to match that with the information we have on file. So those people that have been voting by mail, where I had that little check box on the back that said I want to continue to vote by mail, that's going away. It's not going to be there, and people are going to have to realize that after this election, they're going to have to ask for it again.
Well, that should do a lot to help those folks who are still continuing to talk about election integrity.
You know, we have a tremendous amount of integrity in our elections. I've told you this before, and you know it, but I speak to a lot of groups, and I'll always ask for a show of hands of how many people knew this, and there's not a hand in the room. Before every election, we conduct a public logic and accuracy test. By law, and this is every county in the state, we take a random number of our tabulators that are used election day, early vote, and the high-speed scanners that we use for vote by mail. We then put what's called a test deck through these. We know what the outcome should be. This is to test the machines to make sure, number one, that they can see every single space where somebody can cast a vote, write-in, referenda, yes or no, whatever it may be, or a candidate, and then does it count correctly? And our machines do count correctly. After every election, by law, we have to conduct a post-election audit. You can do that one of 2 ways. You can have your canvassing board randomly select a race and precincts, and then you go find all the ballots, early vote, election day, and vote by mail for those precincts, and sit down and hand count those ballots to ensure that the machine's counted correctly. Or we can use another method, and this is what I do. It's an electronic audit system that's certified by the state. It's basically another tabulation system, a totally different one. I'm required to do 20% of our precincts in this post-election audit. I do 100% because I want to ensure and be able to show the public that our machines are counting correctly. And a lot of people don't understand that. A lot of people don't realize that we've done audits. You know, one of the things that we're good at is data and balancing and auditing. When you go to vote in person, you have to sign in. You have to provide identification. You get a ballot and you vote. We know how many people signed into each and every precinct and early vote site. So we know how many votes we should have coming out of those sites. We're constantly auditing that information and making sure that our numbers are matching.
Well, I think a lot of people need to understand, too, that you've been the recipient of awards for the way that you have conducted elections in Hillsborough County. And in fact, you have been sent out to other counties to help their supervisor of elections and their teams understand how to hold the vote more efficiently or better, or what systems to use. Is this correct? I mean, I know you told me in the past.
We are. We're a role model. We received the Governor Sterling Award. We were the first supervisor of election in the state to receive it. It's a very prestigious award.
It is.
It's based on performance, management, making sure you're doing what you say you're going to do. So it's a tremendous opportunity for us to, again, set goals and make sure that we're knowing what we're doing. Our association of all 67 supervisors is a totally bipartisan group. And we're there to help each other. You know, I tell people all the time, your supervisor of election is the absolute best person to help you in any time that you've got an issue with voting. They're going to be your biggest fan, I guarantee you. So we work together closely. And yes, we've put on different seminars and workshops at our office. We did one where we had people all the way from Key West to almost Alabama that came to our office for a presentation. And it was all on Spanish language, believe it or not.
Well, I know that I'm a regular recipient of your emails. I follow closely what goes on. You're all over social media. And since and I think that this has increased, correct me if I'm wrong, but since the 2020 election, I love these deep dives you're doing and posting on Facebook into different aspects of voting. So why don't we share with our audience a little bit about that?
Yeah, they're great. Every Tuesday, we drop another video. And we've already dropped a lot of them, and they cover everything from redistricting and what that means to how vote by mail works, anything that you can think of. We're there. What's the life of a ballot? So people can go to our website, votehillsborough.gov, and you'll see a link right on there to click to watch videos. We also, one of my favorites, we have an entire behind-the-scene video on there that literally walks you through our office from the front where voter services is all the way to the back where we have all our own vote by mail. We do all our own vote by mail, putting the packages together and receiving it. We don't contract any of that out. That's all done in-house. So it's a tremendous video.
And that should be a comfort to a lot of people, again, who are continuing to question election integrity, that we are doing and handling all of this in-house with our own people, with your own team, and you know what's going on at all times with the ballots. Okay. Well, I know that you also have a very extensive and aggressive program of going out to the high schools. So I want to talk about that for a few minutes.
We do. We've been working with the Hillsborough County Public Schools and also some of the private schools for years now. So by law, we can pre-register 16 and 17-year-olds. A lot of these kids get registered when they go to get their driver's license, but we still have a lot of them that we're registering. So we go into each school at least twice a year, again, working with the school district, and give the 16 and 17-year-olds and some 18-year-olds that didn't realize they could register, they're ready to go. What that does then is that the 16 and 17-year-olds can't vote, but the day they turn 18, we'll be shipping their voter information card with a whole lot of other information and encouraging them to go to our website for any questions on what they may encounter if they come to vote in person at either early vote or election day, or how to vote by mail.
Why don't we spend a few minutes, too, talking about the website itself, because I go to it all the time and looking up information. So why don't we share with our audience, what can you find at the website?
There's a tremendous amount of information on there. One of the biggest things I always talk about is the data. You can go on our website and you can drill down and look at every election for the past probably 15 years, including city elections and Plant City elections, City of Tampa. And you can see what the turnout was. You can drill down and see what the turnout was by precinct in these elections. You can see what the turnout was by age groups, starting with 18 to 25 and going all the way up to, I think it's 65 and above. So there's a lot of information on there. We talked about the videos. There's also all the maps that are on there, and we've been getting a lot of interest in that right now because of redistricting.
Exactly.
And we're in the middle right now of re-precincting. That's what we have to do after the redistricting's done. And there's a great video about that on there, because we have to take like 7 layers of districts. And I kid about this, that our county commission has 4 single-member districts.
Right.
Our school board has 5, so none of them match.
No.
Then you've got your City of Tampa has 4 districts within the city, or city wards. Then we got the House, State House, the state Senate, and then the congressional seats, which what we're waiting on that right now. That's they're coming back for special session to do that.
Exactly.
So we're waiting on that. So we put all those layers, including community development and special taxing districts, by the way. We put all those onto one map, if you will, compress them, and we overlay our current precincts to them. And I can tell you that we've been going through this process now for several days, and we're going to be adding about 50 precincts to our 390 precincts.
Wow.
There's a good reason for that, though, because what happens when the House draws a new line, it splits an existing precinct. Well, we don't want the people to have to go to different polling sites.
Right.
So we're going to co-locate those people at the same polling site they were already at. But it's going to be 2 different election boards in there, 2 different machines, so that there's no confusion. But they're going to be able to go back and vote on election day, pretty much every one of them at the same place they voted before.
That's a tremendous accommodation for them. Is there a rule of thumb about how big a precinct can be?
You know, we try and keep them around 2,500, but I've got some like in the Fishhawk area that are well above that. But it's also, Fishhawk is its own, it's got several community development districts within it. We have a great site there where everybody votes on election day, and it's a huge one of the Palmetto Association building there. So yeah, that's one of my biggest ones. We've got, ironically, we've got some precincts that may only have 20 voters in it. And it's, again, goes back to what I was talking about before, is that we don't want to mix voters that are voting different ballots. And you know, you could be living on the street and they draw the line right down the middle of your street, and you're voting for one school board member, and they're voting for another school board member, and that can lead to confusion.
It can, and we've seen that happen,
yeah,
right?
So if we can isolate those and keep them separate so that we're not, it's called splits, you know, and I prefer not to have any splits.
So I know that you're also in the process of soliciting right now poll workers. So maybe we should spend a few minutes talking about that.
Absolutely. We are, and if someone's interested in being a poll worker, they can go to our website, votehillsborough.gov, look for that button that I want to be a poll worker. There's a process that you go through. All of our training is online now. So it's not like you have to drive from Sun City or Odessa down to Falkenberg Road for training. So we're able to provide all that training online. There is a process that you have to go through, and we are looking for poll workers still, that's for sure. You know, we talk about our poll workers, and you're familiar with it too.
Sure, I've been a poll worker.
We get most of our poll workers from other poll workers, so that always works out well.
Is there a deadline for being a poll worker?
Well, we want to have everything done here within the next month.
Okay.
We'd like to have everything wrapped up, make sure that we know who we're going to have. You know, we've been working
as we prepare
months.
for the primary, right?
Absolutely.
In August.
August 23rd. And, you know, early voting starts 2 weeks before that, too.
Exactly.
But we've been working for months now on securing our polling sites. You know, we've got well over 210, 220 polling sites around the county.
You had such a challenge during COVID.
We did. The weekend before the 2020 presidential preference primary, which was March 17th,
right,
the governor shut down visitation at all assisted living facilities.
Right.
And we have numerous facilities in Hillsborough County that are step facilities, where they can be independent living and then assisted living, skilled nursing, and they shut them all down. So we had to immediately move 10 polling sites, but we were able to co-locate them in nearby sites. And a lot of them are going to be back open now. So, you know, there was, especially in the Sun City area, I know we lost several sites down there. And
well, we closed our facilities down.
Right, and we're hoping that we're going to be back into those. But with that, too, is that we have 26 early vote sites. So we've got to make sure that we've got all those contracts in place, everybody's on the same page, that they know we're taking that facility over or that part of that facility for a 2-week period during early voting.
Well, I've been a poll worker, and when I was a poll worker, of course, the training was at a facility. It was very near where I lived, but we had to go to take classes. I love the fact that it's online, and I tell everyone, if you want to get involved in the election process, this is one of the best places to start, being a poll worker, because you see the process from beginning to end. You see what happens when the poll opens, the people come in to vote. they come to you, you hand them a ballot, they go to the machine or whatever method they're using, and then the ballots get fed into the counter, and then you have to close the poll, and then the results get reported. So it's a wonderful way to engage.
And that's a great point that you made too about 7 o'clock or when the last person in line is voted. The clerk or assistant clerk then puts what's called an ender card into that tabulator, and it will not receive any more ballots after that. It won't accept them.
Right.
And then the next thing that's done is there's the results tape of that machine. And there's 2 copies of it printed out. One copy is taped to the door of the polling site in plain view for the public to see. The rest of it comes to my office. But, again, you've got that transparency and openness that, here, we're going to post the results right here for this polling site. Here's which candidate got how many votes. Here's which referenda item got how many votes.
Good. Well, we've talked about the changes since 2020. We've talked about your outreach on social media as well as your emails, which anyone could subscribe to. We've talked about your efforts in the high schools to recruit and make young people who are going to be voting for the first time aware of how it works. We've talked about mail-in ballot procedures that have changed because of legislation and different procedures since the 2020 election. So recruiting of poll workers, which is an excellent way to get informed and involved in the process. So what else would you like to cover at this point of new, exciting, or changes that you've made, you and your team?
Yeah. One of the things we found out during the pandemic is that we can work remotely rather well. I've only got 45 full-time staff, but as an election draws near, we're bringing on additional full-time temporary employees. Then, of course, by the time we get to the election, early vote will bring on 600 poll workers, and on election day, about 2,200 poll workers. So that's been one of our tremendous areas that we've done so much work in, and we've automated so much of it. We're using, technology to get in touch with our potential poll workers and our poll workers to keep them engaged. You mentioned getting the emails, so you know that monthly we send out a newsletter, and it's pretty much timely, what's going on type thing now. And anybody, again, can go to our website, votehillsborough.gov, and they can sign up to get that newsletter. But one of the biggest problems that we've had in the last year now, at least, is misinformation, malinformation, and disinformation.
If you're just joining me right now on Connecting with Kim here on TBAE, my guest in the chair is Mr. Craig Latimer, who is the Supervisor of Elections for Hillsborough County, Florida. Yes, the spread of misinformation on social media, it never ceases to amaze me and shock me. Yeah. People, sometimes I sit there and think, do they have nothing better to do? Because I'm so busy, I don't have time for that. But you're right, it's been, and in fact, something that happened, and we can talk about it, it necessitated you writing a letter to the legislature about it.
That's correct, yeah. That was some information one of the legislators put out during a closing on the election bill that was totally erroneous, and if he would have checked, he would have found out it was totally erroneous.
Well, I give you kudos for taking the time to write that letter. You made it public so everybody could see what the incident you were talking about, and defending, your office and the state of elections in Hillsborough County. I really applaud you for that.
Well, Kim, you know that prior to this, I spent 35 years in law enforcement.
I know you did.
I take the security, transparency, and integrity of our elections very seriously. So yes, I'm going to respond to things like that. But we're trying to encourage people. Get your information from a trusted source.
Right.
Our website's a trusted source. We had to jump through hoops to get that .gov at the end of our website. You don't just go to GoDaddy and get that. It's a strenuous process that you have to go through. We are a trusted source. And again, we've got so much information on our website. And I go back to what I told you about doing the public logic and accuracy test and then doing the post-election audit. I love it. I spoke to a group the other day of 35, 40 people, professionals. And I said, raise your hand if you knew that. And there wasn't a single hand in the room that went up. And that's when I told them, now I want you to be my ambassador. You need to go home and talk to your family, your friends, your neighbors, and say, hey, guess what I learned today? Did you know our election office already did an audit? On every election they do an audit. So that's the information we're trying to get out right now. pick the phone up and call us if you got a question. We'll be more than happy to give you an answer and give you an answer you can trust.
Well, and I think this is important because, you know, I go to your website a lot because there's been so much jumping in and jumping out of races locally with candidates. I'm going there all the time to check on, well, who's in this race now? And look at the list and see, you know, how much money have they raised. It's amazing what you can find out. I mean, I've drilled down through your whole menu.
Yesterday, somebody called us and said, you don't have anybody listed for any of the upcoming City of Tampa races. I said, that's because nobody's filed to run yet. And then we got, boom, we hit 2 back-to-back people jumped in the race. So now we've got some people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think I can't recommend highly enough, if you want to have accurate information and you want to know what's going on in Hillsborough County, to go to your website and drill down like I do. I mean, the menus come up and sometimes I just drill down just to see, well, what am I going to see if I drill down in that menu? What am I going to find out that I didn't know before? It's a very easy website to navigate, and I think your videos are informative. Everyone can look at them either on the website or on social media, on your Facebook page. So I think you're doing a great job with that. And I've learned in this business, being with the radio show and your background, you can't tell them often enough. You can't tell them, you can just multiply the many ways you tell them, because people listen at different rates and they don't always absorb. And so you just keep repeating the same information over and over and hope it sticks, right?
Yeah, and let's go back a minute, because I mentioned City of Tampa, and it made me think about it, because one of the things we're talking about for your viewers that live in the City of Tampa.
Absolutely.
There's an election, March of 2023. So if you get a vote-by-mail ballot for the November election, you're not going to automatically get one for that City of Tampa election. You're going to have to call and order that election, or that ballot for that election. So we're going to be communicating with people, you know, via mail and through our social media and everything else to get that word out. But you know, it's going to be a huge learning curve. Our association estimated that statewide it's going to cost roughly $20 million for all of the counties to get information out about that simple change in statute.
Wow.
Because it's going to take all kinds of mail and education pieces to get out there.
Well, you know, I remember during the pandemic, 2019, and preparing for the election of 2020, my mother and I filed requests for mail-in ballots for both the primary and the general, because we just didn't know what was going to happen, and we wanted to be covered. And I'm so glad that you let me know about this change, that now you have to request it every single time. And I bet a lot of people don't know that. So we really need to emphasize
and
that.
And what you said, too, that you got a vote-by-mail ballot, but you didn't use it.
I didn't use it.
You went and voted in person, and you can do that.
Right.
You know, if you get a vote-by-mail ballot and decide, I want to go vote in person, we love for you to bring that ballot package with you, and we'll spoil it. But if not, it doesn't matter, because as soon as we check you in to vote, it's going to flag you that you voted already, so we're not going to take a vote-by-mail ballot from you either.
That's exactly what we ended up doing. We ended up voting early at one of the early vote sites that was near us, and we took our ballots with us, our mail-in ballots. We spoiled them ourselves before we got there, because we weren't sure what the procedure was, but we just went ahead and spoiled them ourselves. And they were so wonderful. We checked in, we handed them our spoiled mail-in ballots. They gave us the new ballot. They couldn't have, the whole thing, I think I was in and out of there in less than 15 minutes. I mean, it was so, worked so great.
Well, that's what, you know, we're fortunate that we spread people out across all three methods of voting. Before the pandemic, it was about a third, a third, and a third. The pandemic changed that. We ended up with 45% of our voters voting by mail, which we expected. Right. And we had a great turnout for early voting, too, which we always have had a good turnout for early voting. But ironically, in this last election, 85% of our people voted prior to Election Day. And that's why, again, we didn't have lines on Election Day. We only had to vote 15% of our registered voters across 290-some polling sites out there. So it made it nice.
I'll be interested to see what happens with this election on the early voting versus voting on Election Day. And of course, we will get back together after the election to talk about what happened. So we only have a few minutes left, and I just want to make sure that you share with our audience any information, any additional information that you would like them to have or know about as we approach these upcoming elections.
Yeah. Well, you kind of hit the nail on the head earlier, is get your information from a trusted source. Social media is fun, but it's not always a trusted source, I can assure you that. I see where people go to Facebook jail all the time because they've posted stuff that they shouldn't have or that wasn't true on there. So go to our website, votehillsborough.gov. We are definitely a trusted source for your information. Sign up for our newsletter that we send out every month and spend a few minutes on our website. As she said, you can see every candidate that's running for every office, how much money they've raised, how they're expending that money, who they're getting the money from even. So there's a tremendous amount of information on there. And I just thank you for the opportunity again, Kim.
It was my pleasure to have you for this first edition of Connecting with Kim on TBAE. And I just want everyone to know that we will continue to air the audio of these interviews on TBAE on Sun Radio 96.3 FM. It's a local community radio station in Sun City Center, and I'm so grateful to them for giving me my start. And so you will still find the show there Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 3:30 p.m. in the afternoon, as well as here on TBAE. So that's all we have time for in this edition of Connecting with Kim. I thank you for tuning in, and I welcome you back to another edition of Connecting with Kim. Bye-bye.